Hello everyone, Matt from Model Minutes here and welcome back to the workbench for another unboxing. Today, taking a look at a slightly older kit than normal. This is an Airfix Bristol Beaufighter TF.X in 1/72 scale. So join me as I take a look inside this vintage model kit and see what it's like. So on the outside, we've got the artwork of the kits that I sort of grew up with, seeing them on the shelves in the shops, and it is rather lovely artwork of the Beaufighter performing its sort of convoy duties in the ocean somewhere. Down on the bottom left, it tells us it's a 1/72 scale kit and it has a skill level of 2. If we move on to the sort of long edge, we can see an item code of 02003, and we have a little bit of information about Beaufighter, plus an Airfix flying hour. Despite the age of this kit, I am of the understanding that if you still manage to collect your Airfix flying hours, they will still sort of honour them if you're a member of the club. If not though, do cut them out, keep them and send them off to Models for Heroes so they can use them for their charitable work. On the thin edge, we have the same information as we've already seen. And then on the other fat edge, we have some information. This is a Humbrol product from Hull in England. So it's showing a little bit of its age now. We have Humbrol paint color suggestions here. And we have information about the two versions that are included in the kit, the number of parts, and also the width being 237mm and 165mm in length. So there are 55 parts included supposedly, and we've got two paint schemes. So this is a pre-Hornby Airfix model kit, and on the back we have some sort of more information about the Beaufighter, an explanation of how the skill level works, and Humbrol sort of advertising their hobby paint range. So let's have a look inside the kit and see what we've got. So it is worth mentioning that I've got this one second hand, and I picked it up maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it's not going to be in a sort of pristine condition. We can't really compare it to kind of modern kits in the same way that I would do an unboxing. But let's very quickly take a look at the paperwork I've got included here. So as you can see, this is everything that came with it. It's missing stuff. It's missing some of the paperwork. So I have got some of the instructions, and it tells us we can assemble our fuselage together. We can paint the inside. We've got our wings that go together. Very simple construction. How to assemble our engines, which again is very simple. Install our pilot and gunner. Clear parts go in, engines go in. We have landing gear either raised or lowered if you want to do so. And then we get down to this point here where we have our options. So depending on which scheme you're doing, you would have this one with rockets or the other one with a torpedo. But sadly I'm missing paperwork. And I remember, I think I was at like a hobby show or a sort of trade, a fair swap meet type of thing. And I had a look inside the box, and I think the guy wanted like a tenner for this. And I was like, but it's not complete. And you've told me it was complete. And I've had a look and it's not complete. And he's like, oh, you're really quibbling over the instructions. And I was like, yes, because they're not there. Granted, you can probably download them online. ScaleMates will be a good place to get them from. But, you know, if you're trying to sell a product as complete and then I open it up and it's not complete, then I'm going to say, you know, what's the best we can do here? So actually, in the end, I think I bought this one for £5. I said to him, you know, it's the end of the day. You can either take it away and hope someone else next time you take it out will buy it for a tenner, despite the fact that it's missing instructions, or I'll pay a £5 for it right now. Bearing in mind, this is a vintage model and it has been superseded by a new tool. So people aren't necessarily going to be buying this because of its accuracy. So here we've got the decals. I think the decals are little bit too big to sort of fit in the box, which is why they have sort of creased over a little bit. They don't look like they've aged particularly well. The white bands on the sort of invasion stripes have yellowed slightly. There is some slight registration issues. I know that's why we get the red dots separately, so that you can put them in the middle, but you can see the yellow around the outside of the dark blue is ever so slightly shifted off to one side, which, you know, is kind of typical of the time. Not a great deal of transfers. They still look like they might be usable. There doesn't seem to be any cracking, but they have yellowed ever so slightly, so they might benefit from a little bit of UV light. You can see the backing paper in places as well has become kind of tarnished. I don't know what that would be from. It could just be age. This is quite an old kit. So yeah, we'll put the paper, which is also somewhat aged, back on there. So now we come to the parts. And in here, you can see that obviously at some point or another, the parts have come off the sprue. So we'll have a quick look in here. They've put them in a new bag. So this is another thing worth pointing out, that it's not technically in a pristine condition, is it? Because some parts have come off the sprue. But here we've got an engine sort of cowling, a little bit of flash on there, but generally the moulding is relatively crisp, but it's a very simple looking kit. We've got both propellers, which is good, and none of the blades have snapped off. It is worth mentioning the plastic feels a little bit hard and a little bit brittle. Then we have our two clear parts, and these are very crude. They're just quite, you know, like ballooned parts. There is an ever so slight representation of molded lines on there, but they are very, very subtle, and you know, these lines aren't particularly sort of present, so it may require, if you're going to airbrush this, for example, a bit of masking, or if you're painting it like I would have done in the old days, careful hand painting process. Anyway, we'll have a move on to the rest of the parts, which should all be in here. I hope it's all here. If I notice anything obvious that's missing, then obviously I can call it out, but otherwise I may not realize. Oh, there's some more bits loose as well. I actually haven't had this out since I bought it. I've only literally had it out of the box to look at it. I've never actually opened the bag up, so it may be missing stuff. So that looks like a tail surface. You can see we've got a little bit of recessed detail, but generally speaking, we've got raised rivets, which is sort of indicative of the time period, and a nice ejector pin mark there as well. We have a half of a wheel. These are parts of our landing gear. And then we have a crew figure, and this looks to be the gunner. You know, these older Airfix figures are not too bad. We've got a nice big mold seam down the edge, but generally speaking, they're not terrible. I've seen much worse. On this little sprue, we have another tail surface, our torpedo, engine exhaust parts, landing gear legs, cowling, and the pilot figure. Generally speaking, there is a little bit of flash and ejector pin marks, but the moulding is relatively okay. Moving on to this sprue, or sort of frame, we've got some landing gear components, two more halves of wheels, all of our rockets, other small bits, air intakes, mounts for the torpedo, tail wheel, landing gear leg components, I think, and other bits and pieces, rocket rails there. So yeah, a few little bits and pieces there. And then that brings us on to the main parts of the kit. So we have one of our fuselage halves. You can see we've got the part of the wing sticking out here, which is not how they would do it these days. Again, raised rivets all over. Same with the wing surfaces as well, lots of raised rivets. Moulding is generally okay. Plastic is quite hard, a little bit dense. I wonder if I bent it too much, it would snap. On the inside, we've got no internal detail. So you're going to be just sort of dealing with that, because it was a crude creation of its time. I don't even remember there being a chair or anything. Literally, you just glue the pilots onto these sort of lugs. There's literally no detail in there. And then the other side, lower wing surfaces, mounts for rockets. It looks to me as if you're not having rockets and you're going to have your what's it called, torpedo. You're going to have to fill those holes in. And then what is worth noting is that on the bottom of the fuselage halves, the mount for a display stand, you can see it on one of them, just here. One of them has the slot cut out and the other one doesn't. So again, you would probably, if you're not having a display stand on the bottom, you'd have to fill those holes in. But I might actually go for putting this on a display stand, because I have some Airfix vintage display stands in the stash, and a medium one would be perfect for this. So yeah, I'd probably do that, make it in a flying pose. It comes with crew, why not? But yeah, it looks to be there, doesn't it? I don't think anything appears to be missing as such, so that's handy. But yeah, recap. A very old looking kit, raised rivet details, kind of crude, a product of its time. The decals may be usable, but I don't know. We had one sheet of instructions. We're missing the other one with the painting instructions, so I'm going to have to download them online and see if I can find them. You did get 2 painting schemes included. Obviously, one of them is indicated on the box here, so it's all over upper grey, lower sky sort of colour. This is the torpedo one. I think the other version had like, you know, for the rockets, it had sort of a camouflage scheme on the top surface. There is a big clear part there for a landing light. I don't believe that is modelled. There's no edge here where the landing light would go, so it's not modelled. You'd have to just sort of paint that on if you wanted to. But yeah, that's pretty much it. A very vintage kit. So you're probably thinking, for your £5, it's not a bad kit to have to sort of knock about, put together, mess about with. I did buy it a few years ago, and you know, hopefully I'll get around to it at some point as part of one of my vintage builds. As for the date of this kit, I believe this is around a late 90s release. I think possibly like the latest that it would have come in this box is 1997. Possibly 1998. It could well have been part of a model set, but they've obviously taken the paints and things away and just left this out. Because in the old days, the model sets were just a box with an extra blister packet over the top. So I think this is a 1997 release, because anything later would have had a slightly different artwork on the box. So from the 2008 onwards, it would have had a different box work. However, how old is the kit? You might be thinking. It does look very old. It looks quite crude. Well, from what I can tell, this is a 1958 tooling, which is then no surprise, is it, given the rather simple design and construction. I did build one of these in my youth. It may have been this exact same boxing, and I found it to be relatively simple to construct, and I hope that it will be again, so perhaps I can help it meet its destiny of being complete. But as we mentioned previously, you're very unlikely to find this boxing unless you're on the second-hand market, because it's not one of the latest versions. I think the last time we would have seen this particular kit is around 2008, so anything that you are buying is going to be considerably old. It has been retooled. That's the main reason. So since 2015, Airfix have had a new Beaufighter TF.X in their range, which no doubt is going to have much higher levels of detail and a quality of fit. Maybe at some point I'll have a look at building that one, but for now I'll have to just settle for having a go with this vintage model. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you thought of my assessment of this rather vintage model, and potentially any other suggestions for other kits you'd like to see me do on the channel. As always, a quick shout out to my Model Club members for the extra support they give the channel. Massive thanks to these guys on screen. Take a look at the links in the description to find out how you can help support the channel and the various ways that you can do so. Finally though, the last thing to say is a massive thank you to you for watching this one, and I'll see you on the workbench again next time.